I'm reading from Rays of the One Light. These are commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriya-yoga and based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. This week's topic is the mystery of Avatara, or divine incarnation. The Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter states, as we saw last week, O Bharata, whenever virtue declines and vice predominates, I incarnate on earth. Taking visible form, I come to destroy evil and re-establish virtue. What is the mystery of this divine manifestation? Great avatars such as Krishna and Jesus Christ are born as babies, even as we all are. They take human form and go through normal human experiences as they grow from childhood to adulthood. They eat, they play. They may seem to suffer sickness and disappointment like the rest of us. In what way are they different from other human beings? The important thing to understand is that even as they are like us, so we are also like them. Their truth, their realization can be ours too. They come on earth to show us our own divine potential. The difference lies not in the manner of their manifestation on earth, but in the consciousness with which they were born. All things are condensations, so to speak, of the cosmic vibration of Om, described by St. John's Gospel as the Word. Most human beings, however, are unconscious of their divine origin. The avatars, on the other hand, come consciously as manifestations of that divine reality. As the Gospel says, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt amongst us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. When I think of Avatara, I think of a story, this is a true story, of a man who was a good man. He just didn't really believe in God, and he had a really hard time with Christmas because he couldn't understand why or how God's word would be made flesh on earth. How would God do that, and why would he do that? And it just didn't make any sense to him. And he tried, to get into Christmas. He was married to a wonderful woman who loved Christmas, and so he tried his best to get into the spirit of things. But one Christmas Eve, he just couldn't do it. And he had to say to his wife, I'm sorry, but I can't go to the service tonight, the Christmas Eve service. I can't believe in this, and I can't do it. And she said, all right. And she and the family went to the service. And he got his book out, and he sat by the fireplace, and he settled down to read, and he was reading for a little while. And he had heard this thud. And he didn't know what it was, and so he kept reading, and he heard it again and again, this thud. And he finally realized that it was something hitting the window, his picture window in his living room. And he thought, oh, kids are throwing snowballs in the dark on Christmas Eve. That doesn't make any sense. So he looked out and he saw a whole flock of birds And they were wet, and they were cold, and they were trying to come into the light, trying to come into what they perceived was warmth through his window. So he thought about this, and he remembered the barn. And so he thought, let me get them into the barn where they can be out of the weather and they can dry off and be warm again. And so he turned off his light in the living room, and he got all his warm clothes on, and he went outside, tromped through the snow, and opened the barn door and opened the barn light. And it was like, okay, come in. And the birds didn't know what to do. The birds just stayed where they were, wet and cold. And so he went over and he tried to shoo them towards the barn door. They just got scared. They scattered. And so he thought, okay, I'm going to get some bread. So he went into the house, he got some bread, and he crumbled it up, and he made a little trail from where the birds were all the way to the barn. And they didn't know what he was doing. They still were just stumped and cold and just sitting there in the snow. So he clapped his hands, he started shooing them and yelling, and they just flew, scattered, and didn't know what to do. He was thinking, what can I do if only I were a bird? If I were a bird, they would understand me. They would do what I tell them to do. They would know I was trying to help them to get to somewhere safe, to get to somewhere better. What can I do? I just wish I were a bird. And just then, the church bells started ringing in the valley. And a hymn came up, and he could hear the words. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt amongst us. And he knelt in the snow because he knew that God had sent his Son as a human being to help human beings so we could understand what God was trying to tell us, so we could understand the way to safety, to freedom, to joy, to all the love that we long for. And so let us remember that God, as John 3:16 says, God so loved the world that he sent his only Son. That love is what everything is about. That's what we're here to learn. We've all probably read near-death experiences where people say, you know, they didn't ask me when I crossed over how much money I had in the bank or how many toys I had collected. They asked me, how much did you love? And recently I was reading a near-death experience, and this person had also very much been depressed by global warming, the rainforest deforestation, overpopulation, nuclear waste, all the problems that we can enumerate very easily. And this person started to be so depressed that he started feeling like humanity was a cancer on the earth, on nature. And he developed cancer. And he was dying. And he didn't want to bother his family, so he took off by himself. He had one hospice person with him. And, you know, he wasn't given very long to live. And he did, at one point, about 4:30 in the morning one morning, he realized, okay, this is it. I am dying. And so he woke the hospice person and said, don't disturb my body for 6 hours. And this person had not been very religious through his life, but he had been starting to read about different religions. And it gave him hope that there was something on the other side. And so he had read that don't disturb the body because very interesting things happen. So he wanted that to be honored. And the hospice nurse said that they would do that. And sure enough, he experienced this light. And he turned to face this light, and he started moving towards this beautiful, alluring, magnetic, warm and loving light. And then he said, I know that I'll die when I go into that light, so can I ask a few questions first? And everything stopped, and he realized he was in control, of this experience. He wasn't being forced into anything or coerced. And so he started asking questions. And the telepathic answers would just come to him. And he started realizing the beauty of humanity. And he said that one moment in that light changed his view of humanity forever. He could never look at people again as being annoying or being stupid or doing horrible things. He said all of humanity was as one. He saw it as a vast mandala of energy. And he went through every one of these horrible things, the deforestation, this and that. I remember him saying that the population is growing to the point where a complete shift in consciousness is possible. And he saw everything as coming from love. No other reason. He said that even the worst people are still pure souls in their higher octave. And he said that all the evil that's manifest, all the killing, all the pain, all the suffering, people act from lack of love or from love. St. John of the Cross had a beautiful saying. See if I can remember it exactly. I probably can't, but anyway, I'll paraphrase it. He said, this world is separated from heaven by a river, and the river is suffering. And there is a boat that takes us from this world across the river to heaven, and that boat is called love. So back to our friend here, he did eventually, after having incredible experiences, he realized that it was so joyful that he knew he had to reincarnate again. And he thought to himself, even if I'm just an atom in this creation, I will be so blessed because it's all made from joy. It's all made from love. And then he realized he was going to take a human incarnation, and he thought, okay, well, I'll probably come back as a baby. And then he realized, oh, I'm back in my body. And this hospice nurse was crying her eyes out, because he had passed away. And there he was alive. She had noticed that he was dead a half an hour before he woke up. But he had probably been dead, he thinks, an hour and a half. which defies all medical knowledge. But he came back into his body, and a little while later, when she was not in the room, he saw the light, the light outside, and he started to go towards it, and he fell out of bed. Thud. But it took him about 3 days to get back in his body and be clear. He felt extremely healthy and aware and alive. And a friend said, you know, you really should go to the doctor, see what about this cancer. And so the doctor took all the tests and said, there's no cancer at all in your body. And the man said, so this was a miracle? And the doctor said, no, it was spontaneous remission. These things happen. But he knew it was a miracle. And he went on to say that that divine light is available to all of us. We don't have to have a near-death experience before we can access that light. And he said now, in every meditation, he's able to draw that light into his consciousness. So let us live in that light. And I just had come across this beautiful poem by Tagore that I wanted to share as we swim around in the little river of suffering sometimes. Let's find that boat. But this is a beautiful example of how to live. Let me not pray to be sheltered from dangers, but to be fearless in facing them. Let me not beg for the stilling of my pain, but for the heart to conquer it. Let me not look for allies in life's battlefield, but to my own strength. Let me not crave an anxious fear to be saved, but hope for the patience to win my freedom. Grant me that I may not be a coward, feeling your mercy in my success alone, but let me find the grasp of your hand in my failure.
Nirmala, talking about the connection to all life and that this is made of love reminded me of a story that I read recently, also a true story. Lady had a Doberman dog that was a rescue who apparently lived the rest of her life in perfect gratitude for having been rescued. So, I mean, this fierce-looking dog was just an absolute love. But one night, out of a dead sleep, the dog climbed up on the bed, put her paws on Mom's shoulders, and was like right in her face, like, you need to get up now. And so she thought, okay, well, she never does this. This must be something pretty serious, so let me get up. She didn't have a sort of formal weapon. She picked up a little 18-inch foam bat that belonged to one of her kids. And thought, okay, well, let me at least carry this along with me. Dog led her outside, and they went outside to the fence. And the dog started barking and scratching and, communicating. And she couldn't immediately see what it was, but she knelt down and looked more closely, and she found this little hedgehog was caught in the fence had his little foot stuck. She had strung some extra wires at the bottom of the fence because the next door neighbor's cat kept coming through and pooping in her yard. So I was like, no, we're going to stop this. But anyway, the little hedgehog got caught. And the dog was basically saying, she said, dog and human were communicating perfectly at this point. Dog was saying, get him out. He's stuck. This is your job. I don't have, whatever the... Exactly. That thing right there. You do. Get it done. So she loosened up the fence and the little hedgehog escaped. And the dog promptly went right back into the house. And by the time she got back into the house, the dog was asleep. It was like, I did my job. It's all good. All's well with the world. Meanwhile, she sort of went panting back up to bed like this, she thought she's confronting God knows what, and the little hedgehog. But the dog was aware that something was suffering and something could be done about it. And you have something to do about that. You can fix this, I can't. And, if you think about this world, all of us have something we can do about it. And God comes along in different forms, could be the form of the Doberman dog, could be that we're the lady in the bed asleep, and picking up the foam bat thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to confront something out here and try to figure it out. But this beautiful story, Nirmala's story about both stories actually, the man trying to get the birds to go into the barn, the other man having the near-death experience, they all give us the sense God appears in this world in human form to help us to understand. I'm reminded of some fatherly advice that my dad gave me when I was fairly young. I was pretty bright, I was pretty good in school, but he knew he had enough insight and he had enough experience both. He of course was very bright as well. But he said to me, look, you're not always going to be the smartest one in the class, okay? But you can always figure out who is and get with them, spend time with them. Now, he was not saying, this is an interesting subtlety here, he was not saying get them to give you the answers. He was just saying be with them, spend time with them. And it was a very interesting and on a spiritual level, if you just sort of look at it from that level, there's a true principle involved. Because when you spend time with someone who's brighter or better or in whatever way than you are, and you do it in the right way, what happens is some of it rubs off. Some magnetic exchange is there. And as it happened in high school, my best friend was the valedictorian of our high school. Now, not one of these high schools with gazillions of students. Our class was about 350, but still, he was the best one of that 350. He would not part with a single answer to any question. He had been mooched on way too many times. Everybody knew it. It was like, no, I am not giving. But still, I could ask him questions related to, or just being kind of following how much effort and energy he put into it. Because he may have been the brightest one in the class, but he also worked the hardest of anybody. And that connection was a great help, actually, in those years. And I mean, I didn't end up being the next one down in class. I mean, I was a little farther down, but still, I was up in the top little bit of the class. That ability to draw on, I mean, that's a very mundane example, but the masters come, the avatars come to uplift humanity. They come with some significant role to play in this world so that we can see. When we lived with Swamiji in India, one of the things that we tuned into right away, in the very first house that we lived in, Swamiji had the top floor, and the floors were equal size, basement, ground floor, next floor up. But the top floor was smaller because a bunch of that floor was taken up by a large patio. So he had essentially a little one-bedroom apartment, and the other floors had 3 bedrooms and bathrooms, etc. Anyway, one of the things that we realized is that people want to see the saint. They want to actually, there's a word for that, darshan. They want to have the sight, the actual human experience of making contact with the saint. Well, now there was a problem. Swamiji's health was not good. Swamiji was very, very busy. He was writing, he was directing this, incredible work that was growing in all directions at once. And his human body could not keep up with endless little visits, endless little cups of tea, with 1 or 3 or 5 or 10 people who came visiting. Well, we couldn't lie either. They would say, well, is he here? Well, yeah, he's on the top floor of the house, but you can't see him. Oh, no, just 10 seconds, just 30 seconds, just like, and you start to get this vision of, we live in a zoo, and all they want to do is see the monkeys and the hippopotamus and the giraffes, or it's like, and Swami was not going there. I mean, it's like, look, if I'm going to be with people, I'm going to be with them. I'm going to give energy to them. Anyway, we ended up moving out, and we ended up moving from that house to yet another house, and we didn't give that address away so easily. So we didn't have to be in this situation where we were stuck saying, yes, he's here, and no, you can't see him, because that just didn't work for people. But there's a reason why. And I don't want to trivialize it, because it's actually quite important. People came because they would feel that connection. How is it done? What does it look like? I want to feel that power. Even if it overwhelms me, even if it freaks me out or scares me, at least I want to make the connection. And Swamiji gave that to people. Now, I mean, he himself was like, who am I anyway? It's Master. He's the power. It's not me personally. But nevertheless, he was an instrument for Master. And so he was always offering Master's teachings in so many different ways. And I love that he paired sharing as the affirmation with this topic, because Avatara can just seem like, well, okay, whatever. I mean, I'm sure that they exist. It's really wonderful that they've come. What do I do? What's for lunch? Who's playing in the football game in the afternoon? I mean, it's like, there's not a sense of how do I get past that gulf? How do I cross the river of suffering to reach this consciousness? We have to see it. But there is this possibility, and I love that Swamiji says they come to show us what we can do. They come because they're not trying to show us that they're different from us. They're trying to help us understand we are like them. And sharing helps us to do that. Because in the little human ways, and even if the Doberman can figure out, look, I can't help you, but Mom can, so I'm going to go get Mom. I mean, that's a kind of sharing. It's like, I'm going to help. I'm going to try to give energy to the situation, whatever the situation may be. And yes, I mean, sometimes the situation requires we give food to someone or money to someone or whatever it may be. But just that, the affirmation, I'll make a confession here. We have started doing a practice. We have printed the affirmation about yay big, which means you can read it without your glasses on, and it sticks on the refrigerator. We have become refrigerator magnet people now. And so I'm doing them only a few at a time. I mean, I'm up to, next week's affirmation is going to be work. Anyway, sharing is this week, energy was last week, and since the Raja Yoga started with energy and energization, it was perfect. It's like, within me lies the energy to accomplish all that I will to do. Behind my every act is God's infinite power. That was on the refrigerator all week long. And it was like, wow, this is great. because it's a reminder of something more. And sharing, and we're going to figure out how to share this. I don't know exactly how yet, but I think I'm going to try to print up all 52 of them this way, and then we'll make a product out of it and get it available to people. But just that, what can I give to the situation? You know, we may feel like, well, I don't have anything to give, but everybody does. Everybody has what's in their heart to give. Nobody can love God except you. You know, you can't mooch on Christ loving God or Master loving God or anybody else. It's like it's got to come from your own heart in your way, because that's the piece that's missing in the cosmic puzzle. It's not, you know, did you ever do one of these 1,500 piece puzzles that takes up the whole dining room table and you get to the end and there's one piece missing? And it's like, all right, who lost it? Where did it go? You know, you pull up the cushions on the couch, you dig around under the, you know, you lift up the rug, everybody's hunting everywhere, looking for the last piece. The last piece of the puzzle is your love. And nobody can make it, you know, there's no twisting of the arm behind the back that's going to produce that. It has to come willingly and naturally, and just with the desire to share. I think this is why God invented children, because, you know, the child is born, not the annoying kind of children. I'm talking about the newborn ones, where there's just this instinctive love that just comes welling up, and it's like, well, you can't help but. I mean, that's just what it is. It's like it comes right from inside. It's woven into our DNA. We can all nurture and cultivate that love. And that little path, I'll add to Nirmala's story without permission, that sharing is what leads to the boat. Sharing is the trail that leads to the boat that goes across the river of suffering onto the other side. Let's find something to share with others from our hearts, because that's what expands us and helps us to grow into that infinite light that is our own true nature and our own divine potential, and there's no escape from it, frankly speaking, so we might as well just get on with the job.